pretty early in Romania, isn't it?
It's just past 5 o'clock in the morning, but time is relative, as they say, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, hey, I'm looking forward to this, Matthew. This is I read your bio and I listened to your TED talk. I bought your ebook, so this is going to be awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm honored and excited to share some Romanian wisdom.
Yeah, and we're gonna get into what Romania is all about. So, because that's a pretty interesting place to be. So this is gonna be fun.
Indeed. So I'm happy to start anywhere. Are there from a format perspective, do you want to start with some questions? Would you like me to just dive in? How would you like to handle?
Well, so we're gonna go live. Oh, we're live. Okay, we're live. Here it is, everyone.
Beautiful. We like live. We're going to knock everyone live.
Exactly. Well, thank you for tuning in, everyone. This is Soul Talk with Ryan. Today we have a guest, Matthew Cross. So Matthew, he's a man of many talents. His bio basically reads like a CV, like a resume. But just to name a few things, he's a top peak performance strategist, Fortune 100 priority strategist, a health and optimal lifestyle design expert. He's written numerous books on the Fibonacci sequence, meditation, unifying with nature, all kinds of really interesting topics. So we're really going to pick Matthew's brain today on his life, his expertise, and I'm looking forward to sharing this with all of you. So Matthew, thank you for coming on to Soul Talk. My pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. So we'll start with, now meditation and mindfulness is completely popular. It's gone totally mainstream, but it's obvious that you were into this 20, 30 years ago. So before we really get into your business and career and the whole peak performance aspect of your life, I want to know Matthew. Where was Matthew when he was 20, when he was 30? What was he doing, and how did spirituality fit into the whole thing?
Well, Ryan, how much time do we really have?
We have all the time. We have all the time. As you said, time is relative. Okay, we're out of psychological time right now. Time doesn't exist. Don't worry about that.
I love the way that sounds. Well, let's see. Let's begin near the beginning, because I think the front end will give some good insight here, and probably some insight into the path that my life has taken and that I've chosen. So I have the honor and the delight, you could say, of having some absolutely amazing parents. Now, I say that I know that all of us on one level or another have a deep love and respect for our parents, no matter what, for giving us life. My mom and dad made an extremely unusual choice for me at a very young age. And that choice was that I would never be part of the conventional system. So what that basically means is I am self-educated from the age of 4 or 5 years old. My parents decided I would never go to school. And so today they would call it homeschooling, but I had no homework and no grades and no forced curriculum. I was able to choose my own curriculum. And when I did spend one semester. I spent 6 months in high school when I was 16 years old. And the challenge is that most children who are allowed the freedom to decide what they want to learn and when end up getting more ahead of their conventionally schooled peers. So I ended up spending most of my time at age 16 with the faculty and the administrators and the teachers, because I was quite a bit ahead of my peers at age 16. And I was thinking of becoming a doctor. I was really interested in medicine as a teenager. And I started interviewing adults in my mid-teens. What do you remember from college? What was it that you really took away? And the thing that kept coming back to me was, our friends, our contacts, our peers and so forth. That was the number one thing. Most adults that I was talking to in my mid to late teens, so I was kind of doing pre-work to find out if college was going to be for me. Most of them said, we don't remember most of what we learned, actually, but we remember our connections. And I said to myself, well, wait a minute, I'm pretty good at connecting with people. And I've got a pretty decent level of curiosity and interest. So I ended up going into business. instead of going to college. So ironically, now, all these years later, I count Stanford University as among my clients. So
Whoa.
Education is not preparation for life. Education is life itself, said John Dewey. And I believe that in many ways, that's kind of the seed of presence and, if you will, mindfulness. When we start to realize that every moment is a sacred and beautiful teacher, that the present and the ability to be present, right, is the most powerful way to learn and be anything. And so for me, at a young age, in my late teens, I started to really consciously investigate what we would today call spirituality. My mom was intrigued. And when I was, still in single digits, I was reading books like Mysteries from Forgotten Worlds about the evidence for very advanced worldwide civilizations of spiritual advancement, not just technological advancement across the planet. And my mind was fired at age 13 years old, fired up with images of this code in the universe, the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio and divine proportion, the sacred spiral, and the beautiful, elegant geometry of life and creation. And so I was on the hunt from a very young age for universal knowledge, for a connection with the divine, and how could I embody that? And at the same time, both my parents were extremely versed in nutrition. And so I grew up on quite a pure diet. We were eating organic food, back in the 1970s when no one was eating organic food. And the term wasn't even used predominantly. So the understanding of the integration of body, mind, and spirit was something that I grew up with and have been passionate about learning about. And then as I worked for a few years for companies and saw the tremendous challenge and dysfunction in most organizations, the top-down, fear-based work environments that most people work in, which is, by the way, a recent invention. It's relatively the last few centuries that we've had these top-down command control organizations. I worked at various jobs and then finally had enough and decided to start my own business. Well, I parallel to all of this, I continued and deepened my studies in how I can access what I call the inner power, right? And my connection with, we'll call it the divine, because I was raised without religion. I was Catholic for the first 3.5 years of my life. But I attended a school, a kindergarten school. And when I was about 4 years old, I was in a schoolroom with about 20 other schoolmates at age 4. And in those days, they could smoke in the classroom. So the teacher was holding a cigarette. I'm 4 years old. I've got, 19 other kids with me. And I started to cough. There were like these clouds of blue smoke just hanging in the air. And the teacher's puffing away in front of the chalkboard. And I'm 4 years old. And I started to cough. And I'd heard this term my mom and dad used at home whenever they were like emotional about something, right? So I'm 4 years old. I'm starting to cough. And I said under my breath, I said, Jesus Christ. And the teacher stopped and she whirled around and looked at me and she said, what did you say? I said, Jesus Christ? She said, you said the name of our Lord in vain? And she grabbed me by the ear and pulled me and took me to the principal's office, where they proceeded to cut a bar of ivory soap in half and shove it in my 4-year-old mouth. I washed my mouth. So I started crying. I went, my mom, I want my dad. Well, my mother and father, they both came down. My father was fit to be tied. I mean, if he had had a machine gun, he would have turned into Rambo or something, So they pulled me out of the school, and that was part of their epiphany that, hey, wait a minute, something's a little off here. Anyway, I was raised without religion. I was raised without the general structures of society. I'm probably one of the rare people that you and our audience might meet who escaped the school system. I escaped the entire system. For me, it was a priceless gift. And I will always, always be eternally thankful to my mom and dad for giving me that gift. Probably I can kind of capstone this thought with that I grew up without coercive learning. So in other words, I wasn't told to learn this or learn that. I also grew up I missed the tyranny, and I choose the word carefully, the tyranny of grades. See, education is not meant to be competitive. It's not meant to be we're both going to compete for a grade. That just measures our memory power generally, not our real learning power. And it puts us in a win-lose competitive situation where we're basically going after the grade as the focus. And that's why most people don't remember what they learned in conventional school. I miss that. So my natural curiosity was preserved and even encouraged, but really just allowed to develop. See, I grew up with the understanding that everyone's a genius. And I believe this and teach this to today. Every single person is a genius. I don't care how they're manifesting it, but we all have the seeds of genius within. And when given the right conditions, those seeds will sprout and bloom into a masterpiece. And so that's really the essence, you could say, of my work. And further, we're definitely, of course, spiritual beings first. The unseen is the beautiful blueprint, the lattice work, the tapestry for the seen. And growing up with that understanding, and then developing and following my own practices to activate and focus what I call inner power, right, has been the consistent factor in my life and has led me to this very moment. That's a long answer to your insight and question, Ryan, but I'm happy to follow up.
Fantastic answer. So the light bulb just went off when you talk about inner genius and sufficient conditions that will allow that to awaken or flourish in a person. What are those conditions? I'm curious. I'm sure everyone listening really wants to know. Is it dependent on the individual, or are there just baseline specific conditions? There's a pattern. If you follow this, that genius potential will awaken.
Oh, I love great questions. It's golden. I teach this simple principle that questions are the gold. The question is the answer. We all possess the answers. The challenge is we're going for the answers first. And the foundation for answers, which are a continual, beautiful upward spiral, are to ask and formulate great questions. So it's really kind of a fundamental principle 101. An answer to your question is to step back and ask a better question, and then to go within and tune in to the inner voice and the answer that comes when we do that and open ourselves up to the divine. We're all connected to the divine as well as we're all geniuses. So the subject of my latest TED Talk, in fact, was one really strong answer to this, I believe. And I want to share that thought briefly. But I've developed a model, a principle, because to your point, there are universal principles, I believe. And I'm intrigued. Yes. I'm intrigued with the very elegant, simple, universal principles. Principles that, of course, a child can understand, put into practice, because that's the key, right? Einstein said, make it as simple as possible, but no simpler. And he also said something to the effect of, look, if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it yourself, right? So I'm a real fan of Albert. Albert and I, we hang.
I would love to hear the 6-year-old version of relativity. That would be great.
In fact, what a fantastic idea. That's a great book. That's a book we should write. Or someone on this line, you should write that one. Universal principles as explained or as shared by a 6-year-old. You know what I mean? Yeah. Love that idea. That's great. But I've developed a model which is so simple and so elegant. It's guiding my work and guiding really the way that I'm teaching. And that's this. Everything begins, imagine a pyramid, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? The foundation, the heart, and then kind of the capstone. The foundation, I believe, in life is principles, fundamentally universal principles. We could also call them values. Among mine are things like freedom and, right. and learning and integrity, wisdom, health, right? Unity. These are in my fundamental principles base of my pyramid. The middle of the pyramid are practices, actions. How do we put our principles into practice is the key. The principles are wonderful. We can stay with them. But in some way, if we really want to realize our full potential, there's a pattern here. Even the word pattern is P. If we want to realize our full potential, if we want to become more predictive in our lives, right, we need to clarify and honor our principles by putting them into practice. And if we do that, we will realize the capstone, which is performance or results. So another way of saying this is FAR. The acronym is FAR. Foundation, actions, results. So many people are focused on, what do I do? The heart of the pyramid. Let's see, I think I'll follow Saint Nike. Just do it. Just do it. That's the center, right? Or, show me the money. Show me the money. What are the results? Okay, what am I going to get from this? What's the return on investment? That's all I care about, right? Is the results, the performance. And we're not taught. It's natural to us, but from a very young age, we're programmed to, you're only valuable if you're acting, what you're doing, right? And what you're having, but we're not really based and grounded in, hey, wait a minute, who am I? What am I being? What are the principles and foundation for my life, right? And so principles guide and focus us onto right practice and will support the performance and results that we desire. So fundamentally, for me anyway, I feel that it's really critical for us to kind of reconnect with what are our principles, our guiding principles for life, and how can we animate them and bring them into practice. And one of my key principles is health. And I don't just mean physical. I mean emotional, I mean mental, and I, of course, mean spiritual. It's a beautiful matrix. It's a diamond. And so, of course, one of the most important elements of health is our connection with the divine and mindfulness. What does that really mean? And circling all the way back to this TED Talk that I did actually here in Romania last fall, that the point of power, the point of power in everyone's life, the inescapable point is the present. The present is where life is. That's where all the action is. And it's truly the point of potential for all of us. And it doesn't matter what happened one moment ago. It's history. It's past. We can remember it if it serves us. And the future is imagination. So the present is where all the power is. And how can you get and really honor the present as we flow along this river of time? Well, it turns out the most powerful way to be present is to be conscious of your breathing. The breath is our beautiful connection with the present. And so when we combine meditation, when we combine mindfulness, when we combine awake with eyes closed, which instantly or within a few seconds starts to bring us down into our alpha levels and starts to really ground us more, you could say. And we tune into our breathing. We deepen and enhance our connection with the present. And we also, in a sense, open up our satellite dish to the universal divine wisdom that is both within us and, of course, everywhere. So we want to win. All of us want to win in life, be champions. And I say we are. And the way to win is to be now. And when you turn now around in English, it's one, W-O-N.
Wow.
And one, W-O-N, rhymes with one. And the way to be one with now is to breathe consciously, not just when you meditate, but to be a conscious breather, not autopilot. And if we do that, we will be calmer, healthier, more focused, better able to connect with one another as humans, right? And we'll start to be able to ask better questions and patiently receive those answers, which will lead us to finer questions and help to open up this beautiful golden spiral of natural and maybe even accelerated evolution and the ability to be present, which is where the action is.
Awesome. So I picked up from that present, living in the present moment, connecting with the present through the breath and principles. I go to a lot of workshops. There's a lot of talks. There's a lot of people talking about action, action, action. You got to 10X your action. What's your advice to people that really, I have entrepreneur friends, they actually had a question for you when it comes to peak performance and 10xing yourself. And I know that you've already said principles is really the guiding force for action, and that's gonna engineer the results that you want. But what do you think about hard work? What do you think about 10xing your output and 10xing your effort? Does that always work? Is that always the way to go? Because a lot of people disagree. And then a lot of people think if you don't 10x it, you're never going to get there. So what are your thoughts, and what has your experience really showed you on that?
One of my next books, I'm working on several simultaneously, is called The Greatest Business Success Story Never Told. The subtitle is Profit from the Prophet. Play on words, right? We're all after profit. And we're not just after net revenue and cash. Profit really means abundance in life. So we're after the profit of health, the profit of love and friendship and connections, the profit of bringing our full potential to the table, sharing it with the world. The architect of the greatest business success story never told is a gentleman whose wisdom guides me to this day. A man I missed meeting by about 6 months. He passed away in 1993. But he's responsible for more value, more hard, cold cash on the planet, I submit, than any other person. And I've asked around the planet, thousands of people over the years, if you had to nominate one candidate who would be the architect for the greatest business success story never told, and whose principles, if you put them into practice, would lead to a higher level of performance and results, including cash, in your life, in your business, and in your work, who would that be? Well, think about it.
I might be wrong, but I would guess it's Napoleon Hill.
No one's ever wrong. That's what's beautiful, Ryan, because
nice.
Everyone's got a facet of the truth, right? I mean, it's a big diamond. It's a big diamond. And Napoleon definitely belongs on the diamond for sure. Yeah. I've had people have submitted. They suggested, hey, what about Napoleon Hill? Along with people like Steve Jobs, right? Sure. And Jeff Bezos and Thomas Edison, right? Henry Ford, Warren Buffett. The list goes on. The gentleman who I'm going to suggest is the subject of my book is also the man who said, essentially, the secret is to work smarter, not harder. Let's look at nature. Does nature work hard? Nature tends to flow. When we get too focused on the physical, the material, we work on action. Action, right? Quiet on the set. Time to act. And most people are measured on their action and on their results. They're not measured. They're not encouraged to back up. And what are the principles guiding our action? Can we be more efficient and more productive? Most people, given the choice, would rather learn to work smarter, more efficiently, more fluidly, less drama, as opposed to working harder. Now, of course, there's a time and a place to work harder. But absent universal principles applied, the thought is, well, I'm just going to work harder. I'm going to work longer. I'm going to put more and more into it. I'm going to be more stressed, etc. I suggest there's a better way. And this gentleman too. And his fundamental teaching, among others, there's two principles I'll share quickly in answer to your question and in answer to the question of the listener, answer to really any entrepreneur, is if you upgrade is a key word. Okay. Most of us are really happy to upgrade our devices, our phone, right? I want to upgrade this so it will function more efficiently and fluidly. There'll be less bugs, whether it's a phone or a computer, name it, right? But when's the last time we actually upgraded this, the OS here? Well, unless you have a consistent practice, right, which includes mindfulness and meditation, and you're continually learning and putting into place higher principles or deeper principles, or you're learning more around the diamond of these core principles, you're going to be thinking that the only way to really succeed is to work harder. And the secret to success in my research and work is really one word: quality. Quality is the foundational principle, not quantity. Quantity follows quality. Quantity of cash, quantity of results, quantity of impact follows quality. The universe operates on this beautiful principle we call the butterfly effect. Butterfly doesn't work too hard, does it? Right? Think of a butterfly, a beautiful butterfly just floating around in the wind, okay? Well, what was originally theorized by an MIT scientist named Ed Lorenz back in the 1960s is that a butterfly flapping its wings, if the conditions are right, a butterfly just floating around a flower in Africa can create a gentle breeze that's almost imperceptible. But if the conditions are right, it can turn into a wind, which can turn into a steep, stiffer wind, which could turn into a hurricane halfway around the world. That principle turns out to be at work at every scale in the universe. And so when you align with the principle of quality, and you understand that everything we do is a series of steps that leads to a result. This Einstein of quality, the subject of my book, I call me Einstein on purpose because he was an absolute genius at understanding how can you set up systems where human beings can be more productive, more joyful in whatever they're doing, and achieve great things together, results together, right? By honoring and aligning the human spirit, not crushing it, not top down, my way or the highway. It's the boss's way or the highway, right? And the boss is always right in an environment of fear. And work harder. That's how I'm going to measure and bonus you. And extrinsic results, extrinsic bonuses, extrinsic factors, either the carrot or the stick, which is an extrinsic motivator, as opposed to creating a condition, a working environment that supports the natural genius and productivity and contribution of people to come out and play together like a symphony. If we don't understand that simple principle, we will endeavor to do our best and work harder and harder, right? But it's really important not just to work hard, but smart. And by the way, when we learn how to work smart and really bring our genius to the table and bring it to life, hard work, well, of course there's times for that. I mean, there's been times when I've stayed up all night working, right? And working on projects and preparing for a presentation, but it's been joy. It hasn't really been hard work. The real short answer to that is there is a higher and better way than working really hard. And it truly is working smart and understanding that everything we do is a system. And when we understand that and make our system visible, I mean, literally visible, it's very hard to improve. It's hard to manage or lead what you can't see. Okay. And so this Einstein of quality, his name is Dr. W. Edwards Deming. And Deming is the architect of quality. He's the man behind the art and science of quality. He went to Japan in 1950. He's the reason Japan rose like a phoenix from the ashes of World War II to become at one time the world's second most valuable economy and still the world leader in quality. The Japanese learned it from an American who also helped the United States win World War II. And his principles, to summarize, are the DNA of every successful company on earth, Apple on down. And they can be learned, they can be put into practice by a 9-year-old, these principles. So that's the long answer to the question. Of course, there's a place for hard work. But when that hard work is in a smarter system and a smarter way of working, right, that raises our energy and raises our excitement and joy in our learning, well, we can create butterfly effects on demand. And you can kind of use your imagination what that can do as far as work and business.
Incredible. Well, we have a few questions that I'm going to please check out here.
Questions are gold. They really are gold. And it's funny. There's no such thing as a bad or stupid question. So let's bring it on. Let's do it.
Okay. So some of these.
And by the way, while everyone's listening and you're searching
Okay.
there, I'll just share this thought. I had the honor and the privilege of doing 2 TEDx talks. So if
Right.
anyone plugs in my name, which is Matthew with 2 T's, Matthew Cross, into the YouTube search engine, just type in Matthew Cross TEDx talk, you'll come to 2 of them. The first was about 3.5 minutes long, and it's on the subject I started learning about at age 13, which is the golden ratio. It's one of my key life principles that guides me and that I teach and infuses everything I do. So I put that into 3.5 minutes. Okay.
Perfect. But we got the question here. So, yeah, there was some language piecing that I had to do just now, but I got it. So how do you know what's most important to do when you feel overwhelmed? Or otherwise, when you're overwhelmed or you're in a crisis of that sort, how do you get clarity so that you can execute and you can do what's most important?
Well, I would think that's a really relevant point for most people, especially right now with this worldwide scenario.
Absolutely.
So step 1 is always, from my perspective, what I counsel is we have to rise above fear. We have to rise above overwhelm. We have to temporarily, in a sense, put it on hold. And the best way to do that is to be like Bond, James Bond. Okay. Fundamentally, what that means is get cool, get present. And that means even give yourself the grace of 5 minutes of no distraction, sitting with spine straight, deepening your breath into your belly, closing your eyes, and just tuning into your breath. In other words, get calm, get centered, get focused. The world's going through an unprecedented hurricane right now. It's a metaphor that I teach. And most people have been drawn out into the hurricane. It's chaos. The compass needle is spinning like crazy, and there's tremendous amounts of fear for our survival and our safety, right? To be able to center in the hurricane is step 1. Move into the center, the eye, right? Where it's calm, where the sun is shining, where we are safe for the moment. And to realize that the hurricane is moving. So we can't just stay still. We've got to move dynamically with the hurricane. But if we can get into the center of the hurricane and get centered and get calm, even for 5 minutes, we'll essentially rise above the eye and the hurricane, out of the storm, gain better perspective about where we are now and what are the key priorities we need to focus on, okay, to strengthen survival and safety, and to be able to rise back up Maslow's hierarchy. Remember, Maslow's hierarchy is a beautiful, powerful teaching instrument. For those who aren't familiar with it, Maslow, M-A-S-L-O-W, Abraham Maslow, put together a pyramid, a hierarchy of essentially 5 human needs for us to evolve and grow. The baseline is survival, air, food, water. The next level is safety, a place that we're actually safe physically, someplace to lock the door ideally so we can sleep and be in safety. The third level is connectivity, love, belonging, social connections, which, by the way, have been torpedoed, destroyed.
Right.
People, okay? And it's not on accident, but that's a little deeper in our talk today. When people are separated from one another, they're much easier to be put in fear, and they're much easier to be led. And we're human beings. We need to connect. This is a substitute only. It will never be the new normal. As long as I'm on the planet, I will be a champion for human connection and truth and justice and freedom and wisdom. Okay, so then moving up the pyramid from social connection, love, intimacy, we go into self-esteem, and then we go into self-actualization, realizing our purpose. Well, it's very hard to be thinking about what is my purpose in realizing it, and how can I feel better about myself, and even the connections with other people when those are damaged, and we're not actually being with our friends or with our family and loved ones, even the simplicity and power of having a coffee at a cafe, we are pushed down into the basement of the pyramid, safety and survival. So the secret is to go within. The secret is to be calm, get into the center of the hurricane and rise. And then we're clear. We rise above fear which means we can come back to the center of the wisdom within our inner being, and we can then look at our life with greater presence and power and begin to reconnect and plan from there. And of course, I have more thoughts about what to do around that. But does that give some illumination around the diamond in that case?
Definitely. That makes complete sense. And the analogy of stepping into the eye of the hurricane has pretty creative.
It's where the power is.
Exactly. And I'm hearing you say the word presence a lot. And that has a huge role in my life and pretty much the life of every serious spiritual person. When did you first touch that? Because I feel that a lot of people consider their first real day or real week or real experience of presence as something that irreversibly changed them forever. I don't remember really experiencing presence until I was 16. I think before that, I just didn't have any notion of that concept. When did that appear in your life? When did that stillness, that presence, that power, was it just something you were born with? Did you always have it? Or was there actually a moment or an experience that you stepped into it?
That's a very elegant question, Ryan. And if I dial back in time and I think about that with clarity, I would have to say that, again, I was given the great gift. And again, we all have the gift of presence and genius and the ability to unleash our potential. But I was given the gift of not being distracted every day at a young age, from a young age, by a forced curriculum, by forced study, by learning by the bell. Okay. And so I have memories of being very present from a very young age. Now, I didn't call it that, of course, and I wasn't. Sure. I wasn't born in a monastery, and so I wasn't meditating at single digits. However, I had a deep reverence, and I would call it presence, because nature played a real role in my life from a very young age. I remember, age 9 and 10, going into the woods and building a fort. And just really being present and enjoying nature at a very fine level, tuning into, the symphony of birds, really keying into, a whippoorwill in Maine, the state of Maine, and what was he saying to his friends? Just being very, very present, and nature playing a real role in that. But I'll give you a specific memory that I speak about often to this day, which is one of the most powerful memories in my life. And I actually often ask people, do you have a conscious memory of absolute presence where time vanished, not just stood still, but vanished, right? And you were just present. And so I'll spend a few moments describing this, and then we can move forward. But, and I think there's some, again, conditions. See, speaking about business, you can't manage people. It's a folly to think you can manage people. Okay. You can manage the systems they work in. You can manage the principles that you lead by that can either bring out the best in people or crush it and have them kind of just follow orders. So it's an interesting distinction, as Dr. Deming said, that don't focus on managing people. Focus on managing systems with people's input to make it better. Okay. What that basically means is you can create highly probable predictive environments where you can be present. And I had played a 4-hour tennis match. Okay. And this was in the summer of 1981. So I was 17. And I had played a 4-hour tennis match on Cape Cod, and it was hot, man. It was like 90 degrees, high humidity. And I'm playing right near the ocean. 4 hours over, 5 sets. And I, after this, was just like exhausted, right? And I had a banana or two during the match, and I was amply hydrated. But at the end of the match, after saying goodbye to my friend Craig, I said to myself, I'm just going to go and just get into the beach. At this point, it's near evening time, so the sun is starting to set, and it's now a little cooler. Maybe it's like 80 degrees, lower 80s. And I go to this little beach that's right there near the tennis courts, and the sun was starting to set on the water. And I had the beach basically to myself. It was a small beach, probably about, I don't know, call it 50 feet from kind of the edge to where the water is. And it was a gentle sloping beach. Well, I got my tennis shorts on. I took my shirt off. I walked out into the water. And you know when the sand is kind of like ridged, like there's like little ridges in the sand. They're hard ridges in the sand.
Yep.
Of the ocean. Well, I could feel those under my feet. It was a very, very soft sand, but it was kind of ridges. And there were no rocks. There was no seaweed. It was a very, very wonderful, clear beach all the way out. And I walked out to the water. It was up to my chin. Okay. And the ocean was just like a pond. It was really calm. And this is Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Well, I put my arms out, almost like Da Vinci Man. So the water's here up to my chin, and the water's, my arms are right under the surface. And I just had my arms out, and I kind of had the image of Da Vinci, Vitruvian Man in my mind. Okay. So I'm standing out there with my arms out long, and my legs were kind of at an angle, Da Vinci style. And I just was looking out, and the sun was setting in the distance, and the seagulls were flying. And I think it was a combination of physical, not exhaustion, but I was spent, and I was breathing deeply, and I just tuned in, and all of a sudden, it was like time vanished, and I felt my body dissolve into the ocean, and I literally bombed it with the sun and the sky, and the stars were just starting to come out above, and I felt the earth literally rotating. And I felt myself blend with everything. And in those moments, and I don't know how long it lasted. If I was to put a clock on it, it was probably at least a minute or two. But I got this incredible sense of peace and safety and security and no worry. The message, in a sense, was everything is always all right. And it was the most beautiful divine moment of blending with time and creation. And when I think about it and just even share it right now, I'm right back there. Okay. And this is when I was 17 years old. So that is one of those moments that was like, whoa. And it was an incredible, divine, delicious presence that when I go back there, I bring it back to the present. So that's one of mine.
Incredible. I'm pretty sure people were really blown away by that. And there's probably a lot of people listening that have had a similar experience. I know I have. Yes.
And we can cultivate them. That's the beauty of it. We can cultivate them. They're available to us at every moment because nature, this is one of the key things I teach as well. Look, nature is the number one teacher, the number one inspirer, the top doctor, the top mentor is nature. And that really is the foundation for my work today. So as far as other questions and as far as other thoughts about that, let's continue this journey and this exploration, because I can be like a runaway freight train. I speak. So I'm just gonna relax and listen.
We're on track. I'm sure there's some questions. Anyone who has questions right now, please post them in the comment section. I'll receive them. But I have a question. What's something that when you were 30, you didn't have the capacity to see? It just wasn't possible to understand at that age that you understand now in the phase of life that you're in currently? Because people who are my age want to know.
At around 30?
Yeah, exactly. Around 30.
Well, I had been asking for many years, for about a decade, in the 1980s and into the 1990s. And this kind of comes to a point at age 30. One of my early companies, early businesses, helped to launch the Discover card in the United States. I was a strategist who was instrumental. I contributed to the strategic launch of the Discover card in America, the credit card.
Whoa.
And I'm responsible for at least $1 billion in consumer debt. So I was so successful at this job, I put tens of thousands of credit cards into people's wallets. Okay. And I had people working for me coast to coast, and I was making healthy money, but it wasn't soul satisfying. It wasn't soul satisfying. Being a merchant of debt Okay.
Wow.
Just
Wow.
not it. And I was broadcasting parallel to my spiritual practices, part of those practices including broadcasting a distress call, an SOS, help. No, I wanted to get into something where there was more meaning, where there was more purpose, where I was more aligned with my meaning and where I could actually, be of service and value to people. So I would always be thinking and asking questions about, deeper, what's my purpose? What's my real calling? What am I really here to do? All right. That capstone around age 30 with an invitation. And again, I think it's about listening, about being aware, asking a great question, and then practicing stillness and silence and presence and getting creative and writing things down. I would write during this work. I had great islands of time. That was one of the gifts in this work of marketing credit cards. I would have islands of time, I called them. Sometimes minutes, sometimes 30, sometimes 60, where I actually, in the process of training and doing the work, I had time. And I always had a journal with me. And I'd be asking the question over and over again, what's my purpose? What am I here for? How can I be very successful on all spectrums, not just in money? And I got an invitation when I was 30, just about when I was 30, 29, to attend a 2-day business seminar, 2 days intensive. And it was about the future of business. And fundamentally, it was about the teachings of this Einstein of quality. And it was led by a gentleman who had been the mentor to a man named Tony Robbins. And another two gentlemen, Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen, who wrote a little book called Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Right.
And had been a mentor to another fellow named Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote a little book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and a handful of other people who have had a real impact on the planet, not just America. Well, this was an epiphany. This two-day training, which I almost didn't go to because I worked hard. So before I discovered the principles of working smarter, not harder, I had worked hard the night before. And the seminar started at 8:30 in the morning. And I woke up at 6:45, the alarm went off, and I'm like, do I really want to go to this? Maybe I'll sleep in. It's cozy. It's in September in New England. And something in me, my inner voice said, no, go. You can always just stay till lunch and maybe you'll learn something. Well, it was an epiphany. It was a game changer. I was open, and it was about putting quality to work in your life. What is quality and how do you actually bring it to life in your life and in your work and business? So that was a big epiphany that I didn't understand. And the message there is to formulate a great question about what your purpose is, about what your higher calling, about how you can blend, right, your own unique gifts and talents and genius into something, a product or a service or a combination that will be of greater value, greater quality and service to the world. And the second piece, which I'll just touch on, was around that time, I also did a process, which became the subject for my first book, actually, for adults. And that process was, I realized how to access my imagination in a really powerful and simple and playful way. Because, see, imagination is the real key. And it's not just Albert, it's not just Einstein who said, look, imagination is more important than knowledge, right? That's the seed, is the imagination. It's unlimited, it circles the globe. It's the key to the universe, whereas knowledge is just kind of very limited and finite. So I tapped my imagination in a really fun and playful way, and it became a process and it became a book. And essentially what I did is I tapped into the Fibonacci sequence, nature's code for growth, nature's code for efficiency and beauty and peak performance. And I tapped into it with a daily practice for 21 days. I spent money on paper in my mind, in the workshop of my mind, according to the Fibonacci sequence. And that means that I spent a certain amount of money on the first day, and then a certain amount on the next day, and then the amounts kept growing by the same principle nature uses to grow. Nature uses to grow all life, including us. And it's a principle that once you align and tap into, you open the runway. You open, widen, and lengthen the runway of abundance and purpose in your life. And within a very short amount of time, I had realigned and you could say upgraded. I rose above marketing credit cards as my primary work to teaching universal principles and working with people to help them align with those principles within. So I don't teach the Matthew Cross Leadership Alliance, which is the name of my company, way to health, wealth, happiness, and success, because that's only appropriate for one person, and that's me, right? Mm. I help individuals to align with their unique way, with your unique way. And so around age 30, it's funny that you picked that number, and I'm curious why, I had some epiphanies that started to clarify like a laser, and I started to follow through with more purpose and consistency and precision, and that's led me to this moment.
The description you just gave of going into your imagination, accessing that infinite intelligence through your imagination,
yes,
spending money in accordance with the Fibonacci sequence. What could you explain that? That sounded like gold, but I'm not sure it was explained deeply enough.
It's going to take about 10 seconds. I'll be right back.
Okay, great.
The best thing I can share along those lines, okay, and this is not a commercial, but this is the book.
Perfect.
It's called The Millionaire's Map. And The Millionaire's Map is a 21-day workbook. The books I write primarily are co-authored by the reader. See, I believe that wisdom is within, okay? And so I like to envision myself as kind of like a lighthouse, like a beacon, right? To help people light up their own wisdom. And so it's a workbook. And I'm going to spend a few moments just giving you a quick idea and a quick tour, because the book's on Amazon. The process, though, I did on a notebook, and it's a regular line notebook, okay? I'd heard about the idea of spending money on paper to increase the abundance in your life, okay? Essentially, starting with a figure, let's say $1,000, and then spending $1,000 on paper in detail. And then the next day, doubling it, 2,000, and then 4,000, and then 8,000, and 16 and 32. Well, before I even thought about that idea, this is years before I wrote the book and years before I did the process that inspired the book. I did the math in my mind, and by the 30th day of spending a doubling formula, it was like, hundreds of millions of dollars on the 30th day. And something in my mind said, it's too steep. It's too much, too soon. And so I never did it. It just felt like it was like way too steep. It's like going from, the bunny slope in skiing to a triple black diamond. It just felt like too much, and I didn't do it. And then a few years later, this was around age 30 for me, I said, wait a minute. What about the Fibonacci sequence? What if I use that as my guide? It's nature, and it will be a way to do it in a gentler way. And let me be specific about what I mean by that. The Fibonacci sequence is a beautiful sequence of numbers. Now, this is not about mathematics, because most of us were turned off to math, okay, in school. It begins, by the way, with zero. Everything begins with zero. Zero is the most important number in many ways. It is a number. Zero is shaped that way on purpose. It's like a golden seed, the egg. Zero is the void that begins everything. So it begins with zero and then one. 1 plus 0 is 1. Then you've got 0, 1, 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. 2 plus 1 is 3. 3 plus 2 is 5. 5 plus 3 is 8. It starts a sequence where each number is the sum of the previous two. So again, it begins with 1 plus 1 is 2. And then you just go back one digit. 2 plus 1 is 3. And that goes on into infinity. The sequence never ends. Okay? What's fascinating is that as the numbers get higher, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, 55, as the numbers get higher in the sequence, the ratio between them gets finer and finer and finer and finer and finer and closer to phi, PHI, the golden ratio, nature's code for growth and symmetry, beauty, harmony, and peak performance. And it's like pi It's an infinite, irrational number. It's its own special number. That ratio, by the way, as we move up the sequence, is 1.618 to 1, or rounded 1.6 to 1. Okay? So 8, 5, the ratio there is approximately 1.6. And as you go up the ladder of those numbers, it gets closer, 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 but never reaches exactly 1.618 ... because it's an infinite number. They've tracked it to millions of decimal places. Well, why is that interesting? That's the code nature uses. The face of a sunflower, the seeds in the sunflower begin 1, and then there's 2, and then 3, and then 5, and then 8, and then 13. The numbers of the sunflower in the seed spirals follows this sequence. And it's not an accident, because that ratio is most conducive to flow, to growth. Okay? So the process begins with a real simple understanding of this sequence put into practice. Oh, here we go. This is a universal principle of growth. Okay? And fundamentally, again, it is a principle that, I'm just giving you a quick page here. It's in great architecture like the Parthenon. It's in the unfolding of a nautilus shell, the face of a sunflower, our DNA, the Great Pyramid, ocean waves, man, the galaxy. So it's a principle that's at work in the universe, the structure, the energy of the universe. And it can be reduced, you could say, to numbers. So here's what spending, according to the Fibonacci sequence, looks like. And I'll get real close. You can see it starts with a number that begins with 1 and ends with 0. In this case, it's $100. On day 1, you spend 100 in the workshop of your imagination. On day 2, you spend 100, but then you start the sequence. 1 plus 1 equals 2, 200, 300, 500, 800, 1300, 2100, 3400, 5500, 8900, on to day 21. On the 21st day, using 100 plus 100 as your start, you'll spend $1,094,600 on the 21st day. Okay? Now, I did this process. I started with 1,000, because you can start with any number that begins with 1 and ends with 0. It could be $1. It could be $100. It could be 1,000. It could be 10,000. You have to start with a number that begins with 1 and ends with 0 that isn't stressful. In other words, if you could spend $1,000 today on anything, in reality, and you wouldn't be stressed, start with 1,000. But if you can only spend 100, if you can only spend a cool Franklin, then start with 100. And if you could only spend a Hamilton, a $10 bill, start with 10. That doesn't matter the amount. Money is just the key to the universe in the process. So when you do that, and in the book, it's a spending journal. There's day 1, and it's a journal, and you spend the entire amount that day. The entire amount. So if you have $1,000 on day 1, maybe you'd send your mom flowers, $50, sent mom flowers, right? Maybe you go out and buy a great new suit for $500. It's a brand new suit. Maybe you donate to charity. You just spend that amount in its entirety that day. And if you can't think of anything to spend, which has never been a problem for me or other people, maybe you're just going to put it into the bank. Well, maybe that's not the best idea in this day and age. Maybe you're going to buy some cryptocurrency. Maybe you're going to buy some gold or silver, okay? You get the idea. The point is, you have to feel it. You have to see it. You've got to feel it. You got to taste it. You got to touch it. Suspend doubt. You go into your imagination. What would it be like if I had $1,000 and this is like a gift of God or the Great Spirit or divinity? What am I going to do with it? How am I going to flow that cash in my life? I did it for 21 days. Within 90 days, my income tripled. It went up 3x within 90 days. I got a new client out of the blue. I started being flown around the United States, and I started to rocket launch my new career. And that was within just 90 days of doing this process. And as a result of that, I started to share the process with friends and family, and many people enjoyed near miraculous events. And I tell the stories in the book. But again, you write the book. Just like we write the book of our lives, okay? You write the book, and this becomes your spending journal, your spending journey. And every day there's a story, and I'll share one quick example of this, and then we can move on. But day 12. Day 12 is Billy Mills, A Warrior's Will to Win. It's a one-page story. There's a picture of Billy Mills. He's now an 81-year-old American Indian who created the greatest upset in Olympic history. He won the 10K, the only American to do it, using his imagination. So I met him. He's in my book. And on day 12, you spend $14,400. There's a millionaire's tip, and there's your spending record. And you get a quick story that takes maybe about a minute or two to read if you want to. You don't have to read the stories, but every day in the 21 days, you got a quick story. Billy Mills is one of them. Okay. And by the way, if that's inspiring to anyone, punch in Billy Mills imagination into the YouTube search engine. Billy Mills, Mills. In 3.5 minutes, Billy shares the secret of how he harnesses imagination to create the greatest upset in Olympic history. And he's one of the nicest and wisest people, humans I've ever met. And he's 81 years old now, lives in California. So that's a long answer to your question and thought, Ryan. But I thought, let's take a little journey into the millionaire's map, because it made such an impact on me. And that's why I wrote the book.
Absolutely. And all my entrepreneur friends that are watching are probably just blown away by that answer of going into your imagination and using a Fibonacci sequence pattern of spending imaginary money, and it tripled your income. I've never even heard of something like that.
Hold on. Yeah, it wasn't imaginary when I did it.
Oh, you actually did it.
When I did it, no, I didn't do it. You don't do it in real life, right? But when I did it, I made it a ritual. Okay, I would get calm and centered. I meditative practice. After my meditative practice, after I got grounded and centered, I really love cafes. I mean, I love the simple things in life. I mean, a cup of great coffee. By the way, I am working on a recipe, an immunity coffee that strengthens the immune system like nothing else. It turns us into like, my joke is people say, aren't you afraid of the virus? Aren't you afraid? And I'm like, are you kidding me? I step into, this is my approach. The virus needs to be afraid of me, because if the virus sees me, I'm going to terminate it.
You're impervious. You have that nutrition from your parents.
It's spiritual to now. It's spiritual nutrition as well as physical nutrition. It's understanding that all of us have vast immunity, that if we tap it, the virus should be scared of us. Okay?
Absolutely.
So the bottom line is I'd make it a ritual, and I'd go to a local cafe and with my notepad, and I would, having done my practice as a setup, I would then mindfully, consciously get into the space. I got the cash and I'd spend it on paper, but I was really present. It felt real, Ryan. It was real. I suspended. Oh, this is a game. This is a thing. No. I was serious, but serious with anticipation, with joy. Like, wow, how am I going to spend today's amount? And by the way, sometimes I wanted to cheat. I wanted to spend tomorrow's amount today. But the discipline is you have to spend it, all of it, the one day, and then you got to wait 24 hours to then spend the next amount, because the universe is going to deposit another amount in your account. And I was psyched every day, and it just built. And I know that I literally raised my frequency. And when we do that, when we raise our frequency, we become more magnetic. We attract. It's a law of attraction. It's just like the whole notion that, because I met Jerry and Esther Hicks before anyone knew who they were back in the 1990s. I was meeting with them around their first website, in fact, and became friends. And Esther gave me, at the end of our first meeting, she gave me a $1 million bill, okay, which I still have and carry. And that was one of the seeds as well for the Millionaire's Map, okay? And so, again, simplicity. What can you do simple to tap and unleash and welcome your imagination around what you truly want? Again, the last point is money is just the metaphor here. Money you can count and track. Money we can all relate to, right? And so it's not about the cash. This is about your values. This is about your principles. What you spend money on over 21 days makes visible what you hear about. What are your values in life, right? Because after you get enough money, you now start to really connect with, well, wait a minute, what am I going to invest in? What am I going to give away to? sort of things. And it starts to clarify. Money becomes a beautiful tool, which is what it's meant to be, of how you're going to flow your creativity in your energy in life. Does that make sense?
This is brilliant. Yeah, I've never heard anything like this. I remember hearing Napoleon Hill talk about imagination and Think and Grow Rich or a law of success, but an actual technique with the Fibonacci sequence. Yeah, I'm going to give this a try. I'm pretty sure people listening are going to give this a try.
I'm going to give you the gift of this. I'm going to give you the gift of this now. It will be up on my website soon, and you'll be able to download it and print it, okay? But when I came to Europe last fall, I've led a series of master classes here based on another one of my books and teachings, the North Star process, to align with your North Star and your inner compass. And I ran out of business cards before I left America to come back to Europe and teach. I've been teaching in Croatia and Romania and around Europe. And I had an idea over a decade ago. Okay. And this is a gift to you right now, Ryan, but it's also a gift to all of those present with us. Okay. So it's going to be a virtual gift. I had an idea a decade ago of a business card, and I really wanted to work on it, but it was kind of like I let it be too big an idea until last fall. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to step in and create this new business card. I want to do something different, something valuable, something fun. And so I got with my designer for a couple hours. I brought all the ideas down, and I came to Europe with my new business card.
That is brilliant.
Let's get close. Let's make sure we see the amount, okay?
2 billion. Awesome.
Now, it's $2 billion. And by the way, you'd be surprised, okay? It feels real. I used a very special printing process and paper. I went into Deutsche Bank in Germany, and I met with a bank manager there. I had to do an exchange, and he was so good and cordial. By the way, I came to Europe with over $1 trillion. Okay. You can do the math. I had like 1,000 of these in my luggage. I can imagine if they had actually taken apart my luggage. Anyway, I give these away as tips, along with cash, real cash. If someone's giving great service, they get one of these. It's loaded with wisdom. The fine print has got my favorite quotes. It's got the website. It's got my US WhatsApp telephone number. Okay. There's a little QR code on the back. If you scan it with your smartphone, it goes to my website. You get the idea. It's a business card, but people love it. Love it. And here's the deal. I gave it to this bank manager in Germany. And I said, his name is Hans. I said, Hans, I want to give you this token of esteem. He's like, oh, no, Mr. Cross. No, I can't take any money. Okay. Plus, there's, I'm sure that it's part of the ethic, of course. You don't tip someone in a bank, right? And I said, hold on. I said, Hans, just take a look. Okay. And he's like, he takes it. Okay. And he looks at it. He's like, it's you. I said, yes, it's me. It's my business card. And then he's like looking at it. He's holding up to the light and everything. Okay. And then he's like, where did you get this paper? You know what I mean? And he said, Herr Cross, he said, I think you're in the wrong business. Okay. So it feels real, but here's the point. This is permission to dream. This $2 billion bill is, look, if you woke up tomorrow morning and this was negotiable and you had $2 billion, how would you invest it? How would you flow it? So it's kind of does dual purpose, right? It's a unique, memorable thing. People keep this, and it's permission to dream, which we need to do more of, because that's the gateway to our imagination.
It's also a programming tool. That dollar is programming the collective consciousness of the planet and the universe. Every time they see your face and your name, they think $2 billion.
Yes.
So I'm sure that's very helpful.
I didn't even think about that, but yes.
Awesome.
That's good. Great insight. And by the way, people ought to feel free to borrow the idea. Okay. I have a really cool, unique design. Yes. It's kind of based on the $100 bill, but hey, when's the last time you got a business card that feels real and gives you the permission to dream? By the way, I put my alma mater on the back.
Awesome.
This is the most beautiful building in the United States that I've been in. It's called the Boston Public Library. And this is where I spent countless hours as a child. That's where I love libraries as a kid. And that building is very sacred to me. So when I had the opportunity to print my own money business card, that one on the back.
Fantastic. Well, before we wrap things up, the final question would be, where are things now in your life as far as business and spirituality is concerned? What's a current lesson that you're processing, that you're learning and working through now?
Yes. It is to distill and share the core principles and practices that I've been gifted with, that I've created, and that I've been gifted with the world. You see, to a large degree, Ryan, I've been a submarine. I would say a yellow submarine because I was a Beatles fan from a young age.
Me
But
too.
I've been a submarine. I've been a submarine. I'm probably the only person anyone will ever meet who saw Yellow Submarine at least 25 times, beginning to end. And this was at age 6 and 7, by the way. Okay, they came to the local theater in Berkeley, California, where I lived, and I went to the matinee and the one or two showings every night. And I was like 7, and eventually they just started letting me in, just let them in, you know. And then eventually, a few days after that, they started bringing me candy and soda, and they were feeding me. And you know, my parents knew where I was. I was right around the corner, but I saw Yellow Submarine over 24 times. Anyway, the point is, I've been a submarine. I've been working within the Fortune 100. So, you know, clients have included Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Home Depot, Stanford University, many organizations that we all know. And I've had the great honor of working with them. Okay. But it's been within the corporate veil, meaning that I have a reputation, but within small circles of executive teams and groups. I have not done much in the public arena. Okay. So the lesson is how, and I know how, when, and what's the methodology that I'm going to be, which I'm doing now, upgrading my website and turning on Leadership Alliance University. So I'm going to have an online university of short YouTube length, less than 10 minutes. No video will be over 9 minutes and 59 seconds. Studies show that if you keep the video short, and it's common sense, the shorter the better, the more impact it has, and also the more likely people are to go through it. So I'm going to have masterclasses online with the core principles, example, the Millionaire's Map, example, the North Star process, example, the essence of my magnum opus. This is my latest book. It's called Nature's Secret Nutrient. It's with an American medical doctor who's an immune system restoration specialist. It's 500 pages long. It's simple.
Whoa.
But it's not carry-on baggage. It's checked baggage, because it weighs about 3 pounds. It's paperback. It's on Amazon as well as an ebook. But the point is, I have a library, an archive, and I'm distilling the vital few into highly interactive, highly fun and playful masterclasses that will be featured online. And everyone, and this is a note of hope, because I'm a merchant of hope. My favorite film is The Shawshank Redemption. And the last word in The Shawshank Redemption, for those who remember, is the word hope. Those 4 letters summarize The Shawshank Redemption. And so I believe we all need to turn up the flame of hope, kindle, turn it to a bonfire. And when we do that, and when we get present, and when we start to ask more meaningful, simple questions about our business, about our lives, how can we not just survive, but thrive again? And I believe each of us creates our own economy that will figure out a way to utilize and leverage the internet to share our gifts with the world, be it a product, a service, or a combination. And that opportunity and the technology has never been greater and easier and faster than it is today. So that's what I'm very present about here in Bucharest, Romania. And that's what I'm working on diligently, in addition to several other new books and teachings, because I'm unstoppable when it comes to learning and sharing principles and stories that help people discover their own genius and bring it to the world. So that's one answer to your question. If we have more time, I could go deeper. But does that give a little bit of insight there?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for doing this. Your insight and the information you gave, people are gonna run with it. They're gonna test it. They're gonna probably reach back out to me and say, "Hey, that guy Matthew, his Imaginarium exercise totally worked. I'm gonna get all of his books." So it was an honor to have you on and to hear your wisdom and the things that you've seen and experienced. It was it was really a pleasure. And I hope you feel the same way about our conversation.
The honor was absolutely mutual, Ryan. And I also want to thank everyone who has been a part of this or will be a part of this, might listen to it, might see it. Feel free to reach out to me. My website is also my name, MatthewCross.com with 2 T's, or leadershipalliance.com. And check out the 2 TED Talks I had the opportunity to do. They're on YouTube. And they're both powerful, short introductions to these principles and how you can bring them to practice and light them up in your life. So absolute honor, absolute delight. And the birds agree. It's getting light here in Romania. And
I thought there wasn't any time. There was no time. The sun is always there.
It feels like we just started, for God's sake. It feels like we spent 5 minutes. So I'll sign off by saying to infinity and beyond. And hey, look forward to the future.
Thank you very much, Matthew. And we'll definitely make arrangements to have you back on. I'll be reaching out to you personally. It was wonderful.
Superb. All right. Take great care.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Bye-bye.